or part two. Sorry, phone ran out of storage. We see after the filet fish scene, again, Anna whispering to Mademoiselle's ear, talking about the afterlife. Mademoiselle then kills herself. Group was apparently devoted to finding out about the afterlife. And that's it. Let's see how long the runtime is. Not Marty's runtime. No. Martyrs. Hour and 40 minutes. Okay. So movie, hour and 40 minutes long. So by no means, terribly, terribly long. But oh, fuck off. That's such a pretentious review. Maybe I'm missing something. That's the summary of the movie. It's probably, I don't know, 90 minutes of just straight torture. 10 minutes at most of substantial plot. I mean, 90 minutes of violence, torture. I mean, at worst, there is, or excuse me, I guess at least would be, at least there's probably 45 minutes of just straight torture for Anna alone. I mean, this feels just purely like an exploitative flick with a fun ending. Is it kind of a cool concept, having a group that is, solely devoted to finding the afterlife? Absolutely. Right? I think there's a lot of fun things you could do with that. Never made really explicitly clear, even if they had outright said, hey, our goal is to try and find out shit about the afterlife in that discussion with Anna before she began getting tortured, they didn't do a very good job at making that interesting. All we saw was just Anna get tortured, get flayed, that's just the accurate term, I'm sorry, I know that sounds harsh, but have her skin removed. She whispered something about the afterlife, and then keep doubting. That's it. We just see 90 minutes of fucking brutal violence for nothing. Look, I understand. We, as humans, and I'm getting very psychological with it here. It's almost 5 a.m. and I haven't slept at all. We as humans like to make things more complex than they need to be. Right? There's a reason conspiracy theories are so rampant. I mean, I say rampant. I myself believe in a few, but I mean, it's more of political conspiracy. It's shit with evidence behind them, right? JFK, MLK, that ultimately sort of ended up being proven right, even before the files were released. But all that to say, we as humans like to make things more complex than it necessarily is. I will give the creator of this movie credit. That's a fun ending, right? That's a good way to make it intentionally broad. Having a group designed to torture people to the brink of death so they can try and see the afterlife is a fun concept. It does nothing with it. We only see torture. And the most interesting point of the movie is at the end when it's keep doubting. My interpretation of that is, it can either be A, the afterlife is really, really good. That's why she's shooting herself. And when she says keep doubting, she knows that if they know about the afterlife, it'll just ruin the point of life. B, keep doubting. She was unhappy with the result of the afterlife. Keep doubting, so you just have a hope while you currently have life. And, if you know about the afterlife and the contents of it, no point in staying around. Or B, or I guess C, afterlife is terrible. You know you're ending up there anyways, so might as well go there now, right? Those are, in my opinion, the only three options. I've watched all these interviews. Like, the original creator of the film said, this is a movie about pain and my depression around the time, sort of regarding my mortality, which, kind of interesting. Like, I get it. As someone who has dealt with mental health and fears of mortality, I know that can be a very real fear. Like, I don't want to come off like just a total douche here. Like, I get that can be a totally real fear. But to me, there was next to no addressing of that in the movie. I mean, there's a reason people interpret the themes of the movie from everything from guilt to the porn industry. I'm not kidding. Less known review, but kind of funny one. Just because, I mean, there's not much ties to it, but the movie's ambiguous enough that it could, right? I just don't... Like, I'm sorry. This was an unenjoyable movie. It was. We spend the first probably, I don't know, 60 minutes walking around with Lucy, or Lucinda, whatever I called her, as she shoots people up, fights a demon, and then dies. We spend probably another 20 minutes with Amanda, Allie, whatever I called it, I don't really care. With Allie, finds a tortured victim, helps a tortured victim, dies. Then we spend probably another 40 minutes just watching her get tortured, fish filleted, and then whispering about the afterlife. There's no room for any sort of interpretation among that. Like, somebody, please explain if I'm wrong. I'm far from an expert in horror. I love horror. I love interpreting things. I could be just totally off here, right? Like, it's 5 a.m. and I'm watching this shit. I completed a long essay. My brain's probably fried. Like, I could be way off here. But to me, all this movie is an excuse for gore, a depiction of poor mental health, an excuse to watch and show self-harm, an excuse and an excuse to have exploitive torture. Like, I'm sorry. Without the keep dreaming at the end, or keep doubting at the end, this movie is not viewed well. It's as simple as that. People love an ambiguous ending. Inception. Fun movie, but also not necessarily one that should be talked about for the rest of time, but because the top didn't fall, nobody knows. Shrek 2. No, I'm just kidding. But I wanted to like this movie. I did. I've heard great things about it. I've heard, I mean, even just purely from like a slasher flick, it was fun. But no. This was just like a gore film that was not particularly well made. Even though it was an hour and 40 minutes, way too long. Even though it was made in 2008, a lot of the effects feel very cheesy and dumb. Even though I guarantee you this movie made good money, the writing around it was non-existent. Like, I'm sorry. Again, I will briefly, in like a minute or less, run through the... We meet a girl, see that she's leaving a bad situation where she's probably being tortured. Girl who was being tortured meets another girl. Girl who was being tortured kills family. Girl who is being... friend of girl who was being tortured comes and helps her out. We learn that girl who was being tortured killed family because she thought it would ease ghosts that she was dealing with. Girl who was being tortured dies. We find another girl who was being tortured who also dies. The group that killed and tortured both girls, we learn is just a religious fanatic group trying to find out about the afterlife. We see a woman get tortured for like an hour, honestly. I know I keep arranging the time. Anywhere from like it would too long. That's honestly what I have to say. Too damn long. Probably 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes. See a woman get tortured, beaten up. She whispers about the afterlife after being filleted. Woman says, keep downing and choose yourself. Again, there are fun concepts in this movie. A group trying to torture people to the brink of death so they can know about the afterlife is kind of cool. Like, that could be a fun horror concept. The way it's implemented in this movie is, okay, we'll just show you torturing people. There's so many plot points that are brought up through the movie. The ghosts, how each tortured victim sees these ghosts or the demons or visions of their past. A network. We hear, the young girl, Lucy or whatever, shouldn't have been able to escape. We've improved on that. Could have been an interesting way to go there. If supposedly this is such a rampant issue that it's to the point where people just feel comfortable going and meeting just at a random house because a filleted girl in the basement said that heaven is real, it would be interesting to hear how it got to such a rampant point and how general society views it. Or we could also just hear some of the other interpretations from some of the other tortured victims. Like, there's fun ways you can go with that. None of that happened. There's about 100 dropped points. I know I said 100 dropped points and then said fun ways you can go with that, but go with that, I'm referring to the torturing people to the brink of death so you can see heaven. There's a bunch of fun ways you could go with that, but there's a bunch of dropped points. We had no connection to really any of the characters. All of this felt like was an excuse to see a woman tortured, see people self-harm, and I might have said this at the end of the video before it ran out of storage, but see people harm themselves, and then just have a fun conversation. In my opinion, there's 3 endings, all of which I outlined sometime in this video or video before. Basically, heaven's good, want to go there now. Heaven's mediocre, want to go there now. Heaven's bad, why wait? That's it. So, when, for example, Deadly Kitten says calling this movie cheap, sick, or pretentious would be like trying to find literature and poetry and Nobel Prize-winning scientific papers and criticizing the lack of poetry in them. This film at its core and at its finest, one that's defining and worthy of representing the whole niche genre belongs to. As far as the film goes, or even any man-made story for entertainment, the best ones are ones that elicit the most emotion in its audience. Disgust? I mean, I can think of movies that did that better. And this movie so cleverly plays with our emotions and sympathy. I felt disgust, kind of sad when the girl died, a little bit intrigued when we saw the ghost, more disgust because the girl got tortured, and then more like frustration that the movie ended in a way it did. Potentially, patiently drags you in with heart-striking suspense and intrigue, then suddenly bashes your whole existence on an iron wall with orbital velocity that you're left with nothing but horror, at the same time wonder and awe. No Deadly Kitten. It wasted my time for the first half of the movie, brought up useless plot points, then the rest was just torture. Nearing the end of the movie, the director almost transcended the audience into a tightly hung height that even the most mundane motion of any characters, every little extra bit of audio or irregularities are all so suspenseful and at the same time so frightening, it is literally horror itself. No. We see repeated torture. The only tightly hung height that causes the mundane motions of any characters to be interpreted differently. It's just we see this woman get tortured for an hour, 45 minutes, and so when we see anything new, we uniquely grasp onto that as that's something different. But then we see more torture, the exact same torture, and I'm not saying different torture would make it much better, but we see the exact same torture, her get progressively worse, then we see her get fish filleted, whisper to a woman, that's it. There's no sort of mundane move, There's no sort of, like, I can't believe she did that. That changes my whole view on the movie. She blinked 3 times. It's over. On a more meta-analyzing and commenting side, the most innovative part of this film to me is the perfect mix of seemingly supernatural mystery and the in-reality torture porn. There's no supernatural mystery, dude. We learn, like, halfway through the movie, that, and it's not explicitly said, like, I missed it in the first part, that they want to try and make martyrs, and then we learn that martyrs see the afterlife before they die. That's it. Kind of cool concept, nothing supernatural really about it. And the in-reality torture porn, you nailed it. Deadly Kitty, you fucking nailed it. Too much of the former, the torture part, became pointless. When there are talking heads and self-moving hands everywhere, an arm cut of an immortal, self-repairing superhuman would be no big deal, let alone frightening. What? E.g., when there are talking heads and self-moving hands everywhere, an arm cut out of immortal, self-repairing superhuman would be no big deal, let alone frightening. Well, too much latter, the audiences became numb with all the special effects and tomato juices. Yeah, the effects weren't great. With a perfect balance of supernatural mystery and reality, the audience were kept in full anticipation with anxiety that literally anything will and can happen. Every gore and suspense had the maximum impact on the audience's psychology. No. I guess what he's saying is it could have gone this way, but it went another. No. This had no impact on my psychology. Alright? A good horror movie doesn't leave me pissed off at the end. A good horror movie doesn't allow me to watch it until 4:30 a.m. and feel tired after. A good horror movie doesn't easily give me 3 endings, none of which all that interesting. A good horror movie, impacts the audience's psychology. But this one doesn't do that. Lastly, the filming, actresses, special effects were also on point or pleasant to look at. It feels a little bit objectifying. Deadly Kittens, together making this no doubt one of the most frightening, thus best horror films human beings ever produced. Blank, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sign synopsis. The story begins with protagonist dealing with a seemingly supernatural... The story begins with... He doesn't even address the first, 20 minutes of the movie. Hell yeah. The story begins with the protagonist dealing with a seemingly supernatural possession by murdering some people she saw in the torture chamber she managed to escape from when she was little. No. I've seen plenty of revenge flicks. I just assumed she wanted revenge. Then little by little, only until the final scene, the background settling was cleverly and shockingly revealed that rich people want... Jesus, that's a jump. That rich people wanting to know what it's like after dying had people/organizations secretly and scientifically conducting experiments on human beings with near-death experiences, though many ways of prolonged extremity, brutal but never fatal torture. So he just skipped 2/3 of the movie? All the torture, the lack of explanation for that. Fuck it, that doesn't matter. All the details that were dropped, doesn't matter. Being recaptured, one of the protagonists endured through a very long, inhuman, heart-wrenching torture and were believed to have finally successfully martyred with a specific numb, strange face and some light reflected in their eyes, thus was able to see beyond death. One of the rich gathered to watch her committed suicide after hearing her final whispers before sharing this testimony from her to the crowd. Told us of one person. Deadly Kittens. Did we watch the same movie? Because you left out about 2/3 of it, and the details you told were not at all accurate. Let's do another one. Bitter yet civilized. Let me start off by saying I love horror movies. Same. I grew up watching them since I was at least 4 or 5 years old. Same. And as the years go by, I gradually work up the nerve to watch movies more and more intense to the point where I'm practically desensitized and can't find any movie scary or disturbing. Kind of same, but I enjoy a lot of the concepts, and I think a lot of them are interesting. This movie was no exception, so I won't tell you this is a terrifying film that will wreck every nerve in your body or anything like that. This film's about a traumatized woman and a friend, both victims of child abuse. We know nothing about the friend. We know that she has a bad relationship with her mom because she thinks, Anna's mom thinks that her friend is a bad influence on her, which arguably true. Outside of that, we know nothing about the other friend, who embark on a quest of vengeance against a religious organization that believes torturing people to the brink of death can transcend them into a state that provides answers to the afterlife. No, they're not going on a quest against that, and if they are, they sure as shit never told us. We learned that towards the end, if not the end itself. They're not going on a quest against that. In fact, Anna doesn't even know what she's doing. Lucille calls and is like, hey, I fucking lit this place up. And she's like, God damn it, that was stupid. Let me come over. The only supposed quest that they're embarking on is just trying to find them. Of vengeance against a religious organization that believes torturing people to the brink of death can transcend them into a state that provides answers to the afterlife. This film is very bleak. It is known as one of the most unsparingly violent films, with the director/writer spawning the film in a state of clinical depression. What attracted me to this movie, other than the promise of violence and gore, was the psychological aspects and existential themes the movie presents to the viewer. Gore and violence gets kind of boring when it's just for the sake of it. I agree. I fucking agree, dude. Anyone can make a gore film and have it have no impact whatsoever. I agree. Like this movie. This movie, on the other hand, was a unique experience for me since it tackles with real-world horror like mental illness, suicide, torture, cruelty, and extreme religious views. Damn near no mention of religious views. Cruelty, yeah, very cruel. Not exclusive to this movie. Torture, not exclusive to this movie. Suicide, not really exclusive to this movie. I mean, mental illness kind of goes into it, but at the most we see is this girl and the other woman fighting with demons, and then it never addresses it. That's it. I love extreme horror cinema, since films of this nature usually take topics like this seriously rather than exaggerate them or make them seem gratifying like a typical slasher movie would, with gratuitous amounts of bloodshed or stylistic murder from sequences. I fully disagree. I agree that a good sort of like darker, more extreme horror movie, a good, extreme, more darker horror movie doesn't necessarily just exploit. It addresses the concepts. It addresses some of the key issues of the human experience, of the human psyche. It's partially why I love horror so much. Not just because I love feeling scared, but because I love seeing how people interpret the human psyche and how they can put that to film. But no, with gratuitous amounts of bloodshed or stylistic murder sequences, that's all this movie is. It's people self-harming, fighting other people, torture, and then watching somebody after they got flayed. All this movie is just gratuitous violence. For me, I skipped a sentence. I won't spoil the ending, but it keeps things vague enough for the viewer to come up with their own conclusion to what answers the organization receives from inflicting pain on their test subjects. For me, Martyrs is a good movie. Some people will like it, while others won't for different reasons. From other reviews I've had, people would complain about the violence, whether it was squeamish or condescending, the bleak tone. Who the fuck is going to complain about the bleak tone? Any good horror movie has a bleak tone. And the ones that don't are nowhere near this. Okay? The ones that don't are actually good psychological horror. Alright? Bleak tone. The third act drew some criticism for focusing solely on torture. There's gonna be a but. All it was. While some felt the movie wasn't true cinematic horror, one thing is certain: Martyrs is definitely not for everyone, so if you don't mind excessive violence for whatever reason, cruelty, brutal torture, or depravity, by all means go see it. I don't love it, but, I mean, that's not gonna turn me off from a movie, but whatever. Logan Eastman, and I'm saying their names because these are public reviews. More disturbing than scary, but the reason this movie is great because it uses disturbing aspects of the film and makes them scary. Not to mention, the disturbing parts aren't just for shock value. They define the story, and the story that unravels is shockingly good, which makes this more than shock value. You need a comma period in here somewhere, dude. Amazing effects, faults, great direction, nope, great story, non-existent. This may not scare you, but it will definitely make you uncomfortable, yet feel for the characters at the same time. No, we know nothing about the characters. I feel for them because they're as a part of mankind, when I see somebody struggling anywhere in mankind, I myself become lesser because I am part of mankind. That's the only reason I feel any sort of sympathy for the characters. Right? Like, I feel bad that this woman got tortured. I feel bad she's still having to deal with the trauma from that. Obviously. Outside of that, I don't feel for the characters. Obviously, terrible they got tortured. But it gives me no reason to feel terrible that they got tortured. I do not. Let's see. Definitely make you uncomfortable, yet feel for the characters at the same time. When you fully understand the story, by the end it leaves you very, very satisfied. What do you mean fully understand the story? The 60 story aspects it dropped? The 5 minutes of story it mentions? I do not regret watching this. Each minute that passes advances the story in an important way, which most horror movies fail to do. No, it fucking doesn't. Are you kidding me? The amount of gratuitous torture scenes, the first half of the movie just is never addressed. No. I call bullshit. I was absolutely not expecting this much quality out of the story. I was more shocked by how good the movies was rather than the gore. Well, it's not like either were very good. Nice direction, but a little bit immature. Takes some time to develop and only focused about shocking rather than being sequentially logic. Cook. Too much blood everywhere and no one fainting. Weird complaint, but fair. For times I almost stopped watching it because it was getting boring, taking too much time to develop, and suffered severe lack of attention to details in the plot. Cook. Again, only word with torture just to deliver the main idea that could have been told in half an hour. Cook. The climax was at the peak of good horror, regardless, like sophisticated and legendary horror movies would do, just to wish it away with cheap horror finale. But I don't think the movie is bad because of continuity errors or anything, but I expected more. What saved the movie for me was the acting of the main characters that gave life to a broken delivery. The villain, however, had great potential to be one of the most sadistic characters back in the decade, if more detail could have been provided, but was squandered due to an overstaying start. I agree. Like I said, that can be a totally interesting concept. In Carticism, which is a religion that appeared in France itself, it is said that mediums are born like that. There's no way to provoke metanuity, and real-world martyrs are just normal people at the end of their karma, foreshadowing their freedom of whatever wrong deed they did in a past life. That's what I didn't know, admittedly, and I know this is going to be like a very much, oh my god, I love biking too. Admittedly, I didn't know a ton about Carticism, but I learned about this movie before I ended up watching it, right? Because I'm a bit of a wuss. I learned about Carticism because I'd learned about this movie. There's no way to provoke metanuity, and the real world martyrs are just normal people at the end of their karma foreshadowing their freedom of whatever wrong deed they did in a past life. It is said that Joanna Dark, for example, had that before being burned alive. That's because usually high hierarchy benevolent spirits assist them in the passage to facilitate their burden, all while the darkness stays down here with the perpetuators. The movie is feeding in that belief, from which I guess the villain seems to be suspicious of. Okay, not a bad review. I still think a little bit generous. Watched it for the first time last night alone, and I can honestly say that I feel differently today on a mental and physical level. This movie took off from the gate and kept it weird and unsettling to the point that you can't really ever get comfortable with. Not with it, just with. There are a few safe moments, but you will get dragged into it depending on who you connect with the most, regardless of who you are. 2 characters to connect with doesn't make it easy to connect with either. I felt sick, afraid, disgust, anger, fear, anxiousness, confusion, hopelessness, and unknowing of how much further it all was going. Moving on, which actually helps. That itself is a sentence, no capital. I was so deep into the mid/ladder to ending, I had this hope that wouldn't end. I will not spoil this movie for you, especially if it's your first time. This movie probably changed me a bit, but I'm glad that I watched it. I really have never seen anything quite like it, and it could trigger several types of people and personality types. This one I won't regret. Darth Vader with 2 R's. Masterpiece. 6 out of 5 stars when it comes to horror genre. If you can't stomach gore and extremely disturbing concepts, this may not be for you. I can. I don't stomach gore well, admittedly, but I love extremely disturbing concepts. This could have been an extremely disturbing concept, right? Like just saying, hey, we torture people until the brink of death so we can learn more about heaven. That's dope as hell, right? Like that can go a lot of really fun, creative ways. Which doesn't address it at all, really. This movie is horrifyingly beautiful. However, beyond the face value of extreme torture and extremely vivid two spaces, and disturbing scenes that send chills head to toe and sometimes turn your stomach, there's a deep-rooted beauty to this film. They leave a lot of things to your imagination while keeping the violence very medically accurate. What? What? A woman gets shot in the chest with a shotgun and lives and is able to walk and is able to function. Didn't die of blood loss. Didn't die from a slug hitting her heart. No. A woman cuts from probably like the top of her shoulder to the end of her wrist. Purely a cut, no blood comes out of it. Woman doesn't freeze when she gets fish filleted. At all. Nothing to keep her warm. Like, that's how you die if you get fish filleted, by the way. You freeze. So, no. I'm not a medical expert by any means, right? I would go to the doctor if I have too strong a headache. To say this has medically accurate gore is like me saying the Piss Christ painting is reminiscent of Picasso. Which is funny because I actually kind of like Piss Christ. I think it's kind of a cool picture, as just weird as it is. However, beyond the face value of extreme torture and extremely vivid and disturbing scenes that send chills head to toe and sometimes turn your stomach, there's a deeply rooted beauty to this film. They leave a lot of things to your imagination while keeping the violence medically accurate. Nothing left to the imagination because there's no plot. Bravo to the two lead actresses in this film and the young actresses as well. The young actress, single, who gets shot. That's it. I mean, bravo to her. Again, like I'm never gonna hate on the actresses unless they did something like incredibly fucked up. I'm never gonna hate on the actresses. It's the same way I'm never gonna hate on a player. They're doing their job. They're doing the best they can. But I've certainly seen better jobs. Absolutely masterful performance from both women. I wish more films combined such a fierce combination of directors, writers, and talented acting. I would argue, well, there's a distinct... Alright, well, laptop died. Love you guys.